Let's try that again. Welcome to the Xbox Ambassadors National National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Again, like I said a minute ago, and you didn't hear it, we need to shorten that up or just call it NDEAM for short because that's a lot to say. I am joined here with a bunch of wonderful panelists. Many of them are stream hosts on the Xbox Ambassadors channel. You may know them by name, if not by face. We have Brannon joining us from Xbox, and we have Fred. And Fred is joining us, and we'll go into that in a little bit. Fred is a very special guest. Say hi, Fred.
Hi.
There you go. Nice to have you with us. So let me pull up my little cheat sheet again because now I've totally lost track. See, I get thrown off track really easy. I'm like Amtrak. No, I'm kidding. So we're going to be talking about disabilities and accessibility in gaming, how it affects the entire community in different ways. We are all we all have different disabilities. This panel is a very small microcosm of the different types of disabilities that different people have, and what they do in gaming and in computing and life in general to make it easier for us to enjoy what everybody else can enjoy. Joining us today, I have, like I was taking, a few of the Xbox ambassadors and the play host. Why don't we go ahead and go through some introductions? Sightless, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you for having me along on this event, everybody. I really appreciate it. I am SightlessKombat, accessibility consultant and gamer without sight, mostly shortened to SightlessKombat or SK, any of those three as well. I'm an Xbox MVP, Xbox ambassador, and Xbox community champion, but I do play other games as well. I'm not just an Xbox player. I play on PS4, well, PlayStation and PC as well. Because you should be able to play regardless of what platform you play on. And I stream on Twitch. I am an Xbox Ambassador's play host. I play a lot of Sea of Thieves and Gears 5 and other things. But amongst, fun fact, I recently became Pirate Legend, even though I have absolutely no sight whatsoever and never have. So that's my perspective on things. So hi, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this event. It should be fun.
Thank you very much. And Viper7 Gamer, let's drop down to you and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yep, I'm Viper7 Gamer. I also am a Xbox ambassador host on Sunday Sports with Monkey Dude 22. I have muscular dystrophy, and I've been. It seems like every couple of years it gets a little bit different for me, so I have to use different accessibility things to get me to play games better. And I play I love racing games, all Xbox stuff I mainly play. I play some games on Xbox, on the PC, sometimes on PlayStation, and a big sports games fan.
Okay. And his show is, I believe, on Sundays, and then they usually play sports
Sundays,
games.
right after SightlessKombat.
There you go. And then Edge 1970. Let's go ahead and introduce yourself and what brings you onto the panel, and also introduce our special guest, please.
Okay, I'm the Edge 1970. I'm also a game host, an Xbox ambassador. I'm also an Xbox community champion. And I'm also a Minecraft content creator for the marketplace. I personally don't have a disability like these guys, but I have a 9-year-old child who has various disabilities when it comes to gaming and various other things that she does. That's why I'm on the panel as a parent. I'd like to introduce this really cool person, though, in the yellow T-shirt, and this is fantastic Mr. Fred. This is a young gentleman I heard about a few years ago, who on national TV in the UK, who had a bucket list of things he wanted to do, because unfortunately he's got an incurable eye disease, and he doesn't know how long it's going to be, or if he will eventually go fully blind. But he's a super cool kid, and he's just an awesome little guy. So, and his mother's just beside him, I think, just off camera. There she is. Yeah. So I'll pass it over to Fred if he wants to introduce himself. There you go, Fred.
Hello, so I'm Fred. I'm 11, and yeah, I play Xbox. I've got a visual impairment, and yeah, sometimes I play Xbox, sometimes a bit of Switch, really.
Okay. There's people in the chat are saying hello to Fred. Monkey Dude says hi. Pandy says hi. I always get this one wrong. Subterfuge Dog says hi. Everybody's saying hi, Fred, in the chat. Yeah, Blondie but Geeky says hi. Yeah.
Okay, and I apologize for my camera because we're going through Teams. I don't have as much control of my camera as I normally would in a stream, so it's just gonna have to be. You're gonna have to look at the bottom of my chin for most of the show.
Yeah.
I was looking at my streaming stuff. I have no control of that. Again, my name is CerebralPaul. I have cerebral palsy, which is mobility impairment for the most part for me. Dexterity and hand-eye coordination are no good. My left hand especially is almost useless as far as anything dexterous goes. So using a controller, I try to move most primary things over to my right hand side, but there's always some things that I cannot do. Like I actually cannot move the left thumbstick and pull the trigger at the same time. So I have to adjust for that. In racing games, it's fun because it basically means I don't use brakes.
No brakes.
No, yeah, brakes don't happen. You learn to kind of fly around those corners. So, and then of course, last introduction, Brannon, tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do for Xbox.
Yeah, hey y'all, I am Brannon Zahand. I am a gaming accessibility program manager here at Microsoft. I have been working with the disability community since about 1995 when I started studying sign language interpreting. Turns out I'm a really bad interpreter. I am not good at it at all. So I switched over to tech stuff, landed at Xbox in 2001, and I really started working on game accessibility as an advocate in 2006. And I'm happy to say that after a number of years, I've been able to convert it into an actual full-time job. So as senior gaming accessibility program manager here, my job is to create basically feedback loops between our community of gamers and gamers with disabilities and developers, both first-party developers like like Rare or 343, and third-party developers as well. I also get to work on cool devices. You may all recognize this one, but this is the adaptive controller. Big fan of it. And I get to work on hardware like that. I get to work on operating system features like the ones we just announced, the new night mode and color filters that we just put out. So it's a really fun gig, and I'm just so excited that I get to work with all of you, and so grateful for everyone who's joining this call today, because Xbox ambassadors have just been a fantastic group in particular who've been helping spread the word about how important it is that everyone can play. So thank you to everybody. I'm really excited to chat.
I have to say, speaking about the being a sign language interpreter, I remember I was watching the event they did a couple weeks ago, or about a week or so ago, and some of the people speak so fast when they're giving their presentations, and those interpreters look like they're just screaming to try to keep up. You know, it's like wow. Yeah, so they were, somebody said something about how they talk really fast. I'm like, how has this person managed to listen and pick up everything being said and then translate it and say it and do it with their hand just as quick? I'm like, that's amazing.
It's very hard, and I've forgotten almost all my sign language.
So speaking of the things that Xbox, I know Xbox has introduced a lot of stuff recently into the system for accessibility. Go over some of those new things that have been added or being added in the near future.
Wow, it's a lot, which is really exciting for me, right? So I apologize in advance if I forget anything, and I'll try to be really quick because I want to make sure we get to everyone. But so one of the big things we just announced now for our Xbox Accessibility Insider League members, we have a feature where you can go in and see what types of accessibility features a game has. Basically, publishers have a system they can opt into. It's up to the publisher, but they can say our game has one of 19 features that we did a bunch of user research with the disability community, and we found to be really, things that are commonly needed by folks in the community. Things like subtitle options and input remapping and spatial audio, things like that. So we've put some criteria behind them. Developers have to meet that criteria to be able to check those boxes because we want a really good, consistent experience. But I can actually share some, maybe this is giving away the farm a little bit, but we're going to be launching these GA, which we mean to everyone, really hopefully soon within the next month or so. So I'm very excited about that. But other things we've been working on are my friend Caitlin Jones on my team. We actually have a occupational therapist at Microsoft working specifically on game accessibility. She just put together some amazing training that gamers and game developers will be able to take to bolster their, basically people, it's kind of intro 101 like game accessibility. And people will be able to get a badge, kind of like to certify or show that, hey, I've taken this and I know this. It's going to be free, which we're really excited about. We recently announced, like I said, color filters and a night mode for the console. We recently did a firmware update to the Xbox Adaptive Controller to make it easier to switch between devices, as well as to make it less latent, so it's got faster response times. There's a lot. And then, of course, all the great work that game studios are doing, like Halo. They just released a whole set of all their accessibility features. It's fantastic. So a lot of stuff going on.
I have to say, from the Halo beta, I experienced some of that. Being able to change some of the hues of the friends versus the enemies made it a lot easier for me than based on the default yellow and blue, or green and blue, or whatever, red and blue, because I couldn't make those out fast enough. So yeah, being able to change that stuff alone is great. There's a lot of what now fall under accessibility features that, until recently, like within the last 10 years, they didn't call it that. It was just kind of there, that I've always used. I've always used subtitles, because a lot of times when I play a game, I'll turn the sound down because I'm tired of hearing the same old sounds over and over again. So, so I'm like, oh, whatever. And I'll just read the screen. So for me anyway, a lot of this stuff that's been around for seemingly a long time is now being all grouped together and even becoming easier to find, which I really appreciate. Oh, and I'm going to I'm on the alpha skip ahead for the console. When I go to the store, I see that they already have a accessibility featured game list on the console. I didn't see that on my PC version of the Game Pass yet, but I did see it in my console version.
So, we're working on it.
Yeah.
Some exciting stuff happening there. Yeah. So stay tuned.
But that's great. So the next question I have for people is, give us a little bit of the history of your gaming, and if there's any games in particular that struck you out that really, when you played it, you were like, wow, this is incredible. And this game really speaks to me, or they did something to help me be able to enjoy this game. Anybody who wants to speak up first, go ahead and jump on in.
Oh, I will if I may then. Yeah. And actually, I will point out as well, subtitles. Just to go back on your point, you were saying that subtitles are great for you because you want to turn the sound down or whatever. Subtitles are great, not necessarily for me, but I use subtitles for my viewers. So for audiences at home who might watch my content or my streams, I try and have subtitles on. If they're not on by default, I try and have those on anyway, so that those who are watching with the sound down or who might have hearing difficulties or whatever can then see what's being said regardless. Because I try and have captions on my streams as well to try and make those as accessible as I can. But in terms of games, my history with gaming, really, well, let's just go with my sort of accessibility history. So a few years ago, I started doing accessibility reviews, and then I've gone on from that to do reviews of, I think my biggest review really was the Xbox One Gears of War 4 Limited Edition 1S, which was an amazingly well-designed piece of kit, not just because it was visually striking, but it was also tactilely very interesting as well, which is a big thing for me. If a special edition release is just a paint job, I will be less interested personally. But if it's got tactile markings on it that make it, different or interesting, I will then go for that. I've then gone on from that to, Killer Instinct with, I actually helped work on the HUD meter volume slider, not directly, but I gave the feedback that led to it. And that essentially allows for you to hear when your combo is going to drop in Killer Instinct. So without needing to see the gauges at the side of the screen, you can tell when to end your combo for optimal damage. And that makes night and day difference when you've got no sight at all.
Let me speak to that real quick. I know for a fact that you play, I believe you played Edge on this panel and in fighter games. Or I know you played other people that I know that said you have kicked their butt in that game. You wiped the floor with them. Yeah.
I wouldn't quite put it that ridiculously, but I know I did fight Ken Lobb, one of the creators of Killer Instinct, a few years ago. Well, on 2 separate occasions, and both of which I had the good fortune to win. But but that was really thanks to the audio design. But in terms of a game that's really helped me recently on the Xbox side of things, at least. That would be Gears 5, because shameless plug, I had the great opportunity to work with the Coalition to implement navigation ping escape mode, as it's called officially, but we just shortened it down to escape ping because that's easier to say. And so for those of you who don't know what escape mode is, essentially you take 3 people, so you and 2 other people, in my case, go into a hive, which is essentially a level. You plant what's called a venom bomb, and you then escape, hence the name of the mode. Now, before this feature was introduced, I was unable to do that at all without sighted assistance in terms of actually navigating the level. This feature actually sends out not only audio cues, but visual signals as well, to indicate where to go in terms of, it gives you a path to follow, and that can be customized to an extent. And it means that me and other gamers without sight have actually been able to complete hives on stream just as a duo even. So me and a fellow gamer without sight the other night finished a hive together as a team with no other people with us, like no other sighted people with us. And that's a great feature. And I'm really curious to see where games like Halo Infinite, where, the next Forza takes accessibility. The Halo Infinite in particular, because the accessibility in the beta is doing interesting stuff, but it wasn't necessarily enough for me to be able to play to the same level as a sighted player. But who knows? Maybe things can happen in the future with that, as with other games like Sea of Thieves.
Hey, let me just say, given my skill level on Halo, trust me, you'll probably kick my butt all over the place, but I still have fun playing it. Yeah,
we could always test that out.
I see a stream coming up in the next month or so. Yeah,
I'm good for that.
But I do want to speak to real quick. You said how you've had input on these certain things. So have I, as a matter of fact, including Halo Infinite. And that's one thing I love about Microsoft. They reach out to the community that they know we're out there, and they listen to us, and they take our advice to heart. We're not just, well, let's put this in and hopefully it'll help somebody. No, they actually have us check it out. What works, what doesn't work, and I really, really appreciate that.
Great, 100%.
Yeah. So you know what? So that. Let me say, so Fred, what do you like to play? What do you like to do when you're playing on Xbox?
Right, well, I like to play a bit of Minecraft, a bit of Terraria, a bit of Gang Beasts. So on Terraria, right, there's a zoom feature which allows you to zoom in to make it much easier to see my character, see where to go, how to play, and that was probably one of my favorite accessibility features for Terraria. And there's a voiceover for Minecraft, and I turned it on. I absolutely loved it. It was great. But then it was just a little bit buggy, and caused my game to crash a little bit. So I had to turn it off, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Viper. So, what do you like to play, and what's the first game that you really remember that you made it that was made with kind of your difficulties in mind, or is it strictly a controller issue or?
Well, yeah, mainly for me it was the Elite Series 2 Series 1 controller, the Elite controller. That really helped in a lot of games for me. It allowed me, like in Call of Duty, I never could run because I couldn't click the thumbstick in. And that just making the thumbsticks on the paddles on the bottom made like so many games way more accessible, and it totally changed the way I played a lot of games. And that's the main thing. And also I started games way early, way back, like when the same time me and Paul were playing games like with rocks and sticks, way back when. But I started with Pong and went up to Atari 2600, Atari 5200. Did some little bit of games like like IBM PC Junior, played King's Quest and stuff like that. And then I started playing on the Sony and Super Nintendo. I played that. I skipped all the Genesis years and stuff like that. And then I had a Dreamcast. Then we moved up to PlayStation, and then this great Xbox came out with this Halo game. That was the big, huge thing for me. When I first played Halo, I was like, "Oh my God, this is like the best game ever!" And that right after that day, it's just Xbox was my favorite game platform, and I played it every year. Played every single Halo. I played Call of Duties a lot. I played every one, and just the Elite Series controller. That's the main thing for me. And now the adaptive controller for I'm a little bit worse at some things now, so I need a little bit more help, and I've been using that with a sip puff switch that I have, so I can blow into the controller or whatever to do different functions now. And then I have the same problem with you with when you pull the left trigger with your left thumb, it just messes up your movement.
Yeah.
So this way I can make one of those functions left trigger, and I can do on race games. All I have to do is just breathe in to hit the brakes.
I want one
So
of
now
those.
I can
know I want one
see
of those.
you need that for sure. That's been a huge help. And then I use that in a lot of my games now. I can pass faster. I can do things that I used to be able to do. Actually, I think sometimes I can do things faster than I used to before with the using your mouth to do things. And that's the huge help too.
I have a quick question, and you can answer it if you want. When did your condition start to affect your ability to play?
Well, it always kind of affected me a little bit from the beginning, but it seems like every 5 years or so, my thumbs or don't, like right now, I have problems trying to reach the X button now, and using my thumbstick. When you're on the right thumbstick, trying to get that to go down to hit a button,
Yeah.
and to bring that back. That's the problem that I have. My thumbs are like starting to bend a little bit the way I don't like, and things like that. So I'm learning different ways to play different games.
So you're like me. You're always kind of having to adjust how you
Yeah,
do
we're
things
always
on the
adjusting
fly.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just
Yep.
when you think you got to figure it out. Because I personally, I too love I had the Elite 2 controller, and there's a whole nother story why I don't have it anymore. But I especially miss like the hair triggers and stuff. The fact that I could
Oh
set the
yeah,
trigger to
that's
half pull for shooters, especially. And so one of these days I'll replace that thing. I do have an accessibility, the adaptive controller, and thanks to Dave, I also now have the kit that goes with it. So I need to work on a build out for that to see what I can do with that. And hopefully it'll make my gaming a little easier, because as much as I do get frustrated, and some of you have been in groups with me. I try not to. I always try to think it's just for fun. I'm just having fun.
Yeah, just have fun.
But sometimes, if the mood strikes you, all of a sudden you realize nothing is going right. So, it's so part.
I think we've all had those.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul.
And I know it's fine. and I know it's kind of an off topic thing, but I want to say it's important who you choose to game with, that, that they're understanding of that. And if you're not used to gaming with somebody with a disability, be understanding of that sometimes it's just a really bad day. So Edge, I know with you it's your daughter, but can you talk about her experiences in gaming, and how you've seen gaming either help her, or maybe some other situations that come up that you kind of have to work through with her?
Well, she's actually just beside me, actually just messing around. But she's 9 years old, and she does play a lot of video games, because it's one of the things that keeps her calm. And a lot of the time she chooses not to talk. So a lot of the on-screen captions that you get on some of the games, like Minecraft, for example, or the narrator thing, she will use those to communicate with me while she's playing a game what she wants me to help her with, because her disability is not a physical disability, it's more of a mental disability, and her attention span is only like every 5 minutes she has to stop and do something else. But when it comes to playing video games, it's one of the only things that actually keeps her concentrated and sitting down and actually focusing on something, um, to keep her mind active. She also doesn't like people being too close to her as well. So when she plays video games and she plays with her sisters, they always play online. So you know, it's hard to explain unless you actually sat here watching what she does, because she has a few other little quirky things that she does, but I think it's hard to explain. It really is difficult to explain as a parent. But some of the features, like in Minecraft, for example, really do help when it comes to communicating, because she'll point at the screen, which means, Dad, read that. I need help with this. So,
But it
it'd be
sounds like, real
nice
quick,
if a few more games.
but she uses some of the emotes to communicate with you as well on screen.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, but it would be nice to have a few more games that have these features, so that she could actually play them. Because a lot of games she won't play because they don't have these features.
Right.
And I'm talking about kids games, not necessarily. She won't play any of the adult games,
Right.
but the kids games. So it'd be nice to have more features in games to help somebody like her when it comes to playing them. Yeah.
Oh, and again, that I know that's some of the stuff that they take into account, because when we get the surveys from Xbox, they ask about those kind of things. So if you've never answered one of those surveys or gotten access to one, I'm sure we can get you one, because it's not just about the disabled person; it's about those who work with or live with disabled people, and that's how Microsoft gets better. Your daughter may never be able to fill out the form, but somebody like you, who's a caregiver or a parent,
Yeah. And so I was actually curious. You say that your daughter doesn't like to be close to folks. Have you tried Copilot, like in the different, where you can have two controllers act as one? So basically, two people. I do this with my son. I have a 6-year-old who's getting really big, but earlier, before his hands were able to move as well as he needed them to, we would play Forza. And with my previous son, he would sit on my lap and we'd hold the controller, right? And I almost pulled my keyboard down. Hold the controller, and got my arms around him, and I'm like moving the stick, so I'm steering and doing the gas and the brake. But now with Copilot, my 6-year-old, again, he doesn't need it anymore, but when he was a little younger, Copilot was around. He sits at one end of the couch and he's got his controller, and he was doing the gas and brake. And on my side of the couch, I was using the sticks. And so it was great, because then I wasn't being squashed. We've
done that with the Forza games, because most of the time when she plays Forza with me, she'll veer off somewhere, so I'll keep the car on track, she'll do the accelerator, and we'll get around the track, and that works it works really well. So
I was going to say, Edge.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, Edge, you and I have raced each other in Forza a few times.
Oh yes, we have.
And that's gone interestingly. But in terms of Copilot, though, I was going to point out that so a lot of the marketing around Copilot seems to revolve around sort of getting younger relatives into gaming, that kind of thing, which is completely a great idea and a good use for it. But there's also the use case of gamers like myself who can't play. Whether it's older games or newer games, there are games that just don't have the accessibility features I need. So in the chat, I know Last of Us 2 was mentioned. So games that don't have the navigation and traversal features of The Last of Us 2, or they don't have the enough narration in the menus or any narration at all, or any number of the various things that or other games have added that make them work for me. But Copilot is that bridge that is quite useful. So I will sit with people, locally, or I have found ways of doing similar things remotely that aren't.
Oh, did we lose Sightless? Why Sightless either comes back?
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Oh, he's back there, was he? Is he back?
What happened? I don't know what happened there.
You just froze.
It could have just been an internet connection issue. Don't know. Weird. So where was I when I froze? Where was I?
You were talking about Copilot and
I forgot.
Okay. So with Copilot is the bridge essentially between me and being able to play these games that aren't accessible for whatever reason. And the good thing about it is that as much as it's locally a thing, so I can sit in this room I'm in now and play alongside people who will then help me through it. So I'll have a sighted player doing, say, navigation and aiming in Doom Eternal, and I will be doing the weapon handling, so super shotgun stuff, all the various pieces of equipment, checking the cooldowns to the best of my ability, or things like trying to think of a good example, like Jedi Fallen Order, where I can do a lot of the combat and or parts of the movement as well. But there are ways of doing that as well remotely to a point. I know Mixer, of course, had the feature a few years ago where you could share your game via a stream and do it like that, which of course had its issues, but it was definitely heading in the right direction. And I've found ways of working remotely. I know Janissary was in the chat earlier. She and I have played the original Dead Space in a similar manner to Copilot, but remotely with some additional hardware. So Copilot, it shouldn't be used as a way to make up for developers not doing their best to implement accessibility and publishers not doing their best to implement accessibility. But when, for whatever reason, a game doesn't have those accessibility features and might not have them for a while, let's say if a game's going to have it post-launch but you want to play it immediately, then Copilot is a great way to make that happen, I'd argue.
Hey, speaking of Copilot, I was really curious. Fred, hey, have you used any of the accessibility features on the Xbox? I'm curious if you've tried any and which ones you like and which ones you think we could make better.
Okay. Yeah, the voiceover, as I said, with Minecraft and stuff.
Yep.
That was great, but yeah, it's just started to lag and crash my game.
Right.
And I thought that was a bit annoying.
Have you tried like the high contrast mode at the system level?
Yes, I have. I've tried those and they are good.
That's on your setting now, isn't it?
Yes,
well,
now actually.
By the way, feel free to be honest. If you don't like something, I won't take offense. We need feedback from the community.
Yes, the high contrast is good, and it is actually on my Xbox right now. I do use it.
Brilliant.
And yeah, and bold as well. Bold's also really good.
Yeah, we're trying to come up with more ideas. So, if you or anybody on the call or in the community has ideas on features that we could put on the console to make it better, my Twitter is, at Brannon Z. Reach out to me, drop me a line, because we are, I've got a list about, for those who can't see, I'm making a very long gesture with my hands.
Your wall.
Features we want to put on, but we know that doesn't have all of them. So drop me a line, Fred.
One of the things I did notice with my daughter, though, is that sometimes she struggles with the ordinary Xbox controller. And I have noticed when we have tried using the Elite Series 2 controller that she can play the games better using the paddles underneath when you remap them to do functions she can't quite get with her fingers, like the RB buttons. And for example, she'll use the paddles underneath for that. And without that Elite controller, she would have struggled just to do that, because she has a little bit of problems with finger movements as well. So that did help.
Awesome.
I have one of those controllers with the mappable buttons underneath. Actually, I've got two of them.
You're not an Elite, but you've got a mappable button.
Yeah.
Did you find those useful?
Yeah. Whenever you're doing like say Minecraft, you can map them to like the chat and emotes instead of having to use the D-pad. And I found those controls really good.
Awesome. That's great. And it's funny because we have this philosophy of like build for one to expand to many. So like the Copilot was a great example. When we pitched Copilot to our leadership, we didn't pitch it as an accessibility feature at all. We pitched the young kid aspect. Because
that's what also I was going to say about the Copilot mode is that like when me and my friend, we play like Dirt 5, we play together. We just use mine. So he has his own controller he brings from home. I have my controller. So we both can take turns playing games without having to swap controllers. He just uses his controller. And then I go, you know what, here, I can't do this. You continue. And then he just continues right off where I left off. And, anyone can use that. Just do in their buddy, use one profile and just use their own preferred controller.
Yeah, same thing here. Like when, if there's a timing window that I want to try and hit with like a game that has a parry mechanic, I can give it a go a few times. And then, if it's purely a visual window, then I'm like, right, look, can you just do this for me and get me past this? And, that helps. I feel like having an advert that illustrates that would be a brilliant idea. Having, gamers with disabilities featured in an advert like that, showing that off as a means to play games that otherwise might not be available, might not be open to them, would be brilliant.
There
Don't know
are
if that's just
there
me.
are a lot. No, there are a lot of games that I've started that I cannot complete. That it would be really nice just to be able to go, hey, get me past this part. I've actually given people my login information to, hey, get me past this part.
Whoa.
No,
Dubious.
no, people I trust. People I trust.
Oh,
And
of
then,
course,
Oh,
but
okay.
still.
Yeah.
But
I
still,
thought you
just
were
nevertheless.
not just some random guy on the internet. Hey, yeah, do you mind? Yeah, just jump in there and fix that for me.
I don't know if this would be a point, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong here, because there probably is something out there. But it would be cool if Xbox actually had like an app available on the Xbox. So, like, say for example, Sightless. When I've tried to play games with Sightless before, this is back on Mixer, where I could take control of his controller. Yeah. But there was still a bit of lag.
There was a lot of lag.
Yeah. But if there was an app on the Xbox that specifically allowed two players to join together, like remotely, and do the same thing, not necessarily streaming, just to play with each other.
Exactly.
That would be awesome.
It's like on PC they have Parsec, I believe, because I've used Parsec.
Yeah, Parsec is what Janissary and I use via a little piece of software. I might as well say it now. A little piece of software called the Titan 2.
Yeah.
Well, no, a little piece of hardware called the Titan 2. So it's Parsec software plus Titan 2 hardware to then play remotely. So I'm in the UK, and Janissary is in the States. So we're playing alongside each other, but with half a world's worth of latency, but it's still playable.
Yep.
And the point being, with that, having it as a built-in feature on Xbox would be great, because Mixer Edge, of course, had share controller.
Yeah.
As we'd said.
Yeah.
But having that as essentially a separate app would be really cool. Sort of, I mean, not even a separate app, maybe just as part of the party functionality.
Yeah.
So instead of having invite the game, it could be, I don't know, whatever the equivalent would be for passing your controller over. I don't know, game together or whatever, and then you could work from that. And it would be, then you just have the same principle, but you wouldn't have to stream it necessarily. You wouldn't have to be live broadcasting it. You could still have it streamed to the other player, of course, so that they could actually see what was going on. Yeah. But having it be just a thing that you two can do, and then you can broadcast it if you want. That's different. Having the option would be great. Right.
Yep, it really would. I know it would help me. But like I said, there's a lot of games that I really, really enjoyed that I just cannot finish. I get hit a certain point and I'm done. It's like, okay, well, this one's going back in the box for a while,
Well, I was playing a game with Sightless where I had to jump from one platform to another, but because of the lag, I couldn't quite make the jump every time. And so we spent about 30 minutes of the stream just trying to make this one jump. But it would be great to have that without the lag and have it on the Xbox, so that if I Sightless said, "Hey, Edge, do you want to come and help me play this game?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." Yeah.
For reference, that game was Doom 2016, and the lag only seems to happen with that game as well. We'd done other games as well.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
But we weren't sure whether it was like engine specific or what it was. But needless to say, it's a moot point, because now Mix is gone. But to be able to enjoy games with others is a massive thing. And whether that's others playing against you, playing alongside you, as I've done in Gears, in Sea of Thieves, in Minecraft Dungeons, or being able to just play the game full stop with, it's about turning a single player game into a cooperative experience with Copilot and these other ideas.
Can you imagine, like, if we were doing Forza and I could say, look, I can't do the brake, so when I tell you to brake, just kind of hit the brake for me.
Yeah, I would be glad to do that. Even though I can't see where the track is, if we're communicating well enough, we could win a race like that. It's not impossible.
Well, the way you play Forza, I need the help from you. You could link to me and win a few races, yeah.
Maybe if you want to see videos of that, there is footage on my YouTube channel.
Fred, you got your hand up there, buddy.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, right? So I'm thinking of starting a YouTube channel up, right? Oh. And usually most like recording and editing software is on the PC. I'm just wondering if there's an accessible way to record and edit videos just solely on the Xbox and upload them to YouTube.
That is a fantastic question.
Great question.
So actually, I think Sightless would be better at answering this than me. So Sightless, go for it.
Right. So I have good news and I have bad news. So the good news is you can actually sort of work. You can manage what clips are on your Xbox, and you can record sort of the small snippets and things via the record that feature. So if you're in a game, you press guide, then you press your view button, which is your left hand small circular one in the sort of triangle of guide, view, and menu. If you press that, it will then come up with record last 30 seconds, last minute, whatever, all those options. But the problem is you can't actually edit those together, partly because the last time I tried it, the trim function didn't want to work either. So if you've got a 2-minute long highlight and you only want to trim 30 seconds out of it, that didn't work well for me when I last tried it, which is why I end up uploading a lot of longer highlights than they need to be. Also, Upload Studio, there's been a lot of requests for the past few years for a revamped version of Upload Studio, and I would totally agree with that, because Upload Studio could be accessible, much like Windows Movie Maker was before it. But of course, Windows Movie Maker now no longer exists either, in an officially supported format at least. So having not just an app on Xbox, but an official Windows, modern movie editing app in general would be even better. So having both, having the way to edit it on your PC if you've got, say, hour-long things that you want to do really clever stuff with, fades, transitions, adding music, adding voiceovers, whatever, cutting through to other content, or just doing straightforward, highlight reels on your Xbox, should be possible with, narrator and all of the accessibility features. It currently isn't, though, at least as far as I've been researching and trying to do myself. So apologies to sort of.
Hey, you're not the one who should be apologizing, Sightless. That's me. So what I will say, Fred, is Sightless kind of nailed it. Although he did speak about a few bugs that I wasn't aware of, so I'm going to go look into those after this.
Add those to the list. Add those to the list, there, Brannon. Yeah.
You and I may have to have discussions off stream then, Brannon, as well, to see if we're both seeing the same things, or in my case, not seeing the same things.
But Fred, I will say that I was a huge fan of Windows Movie Maker. I miss that app.
I still use it because it's the only accessible movie editing program that I'm aware of that isn't overly convoluted and doesn't require sort of third-party things. But unfortunately, it's really hard to get running. So
yeah, I will make sure that both the Upload Studio team gets the information. And I will also go ping the Windows team to see what's up, because I haven't reached out to them in a while about that. But
didn't they say that Paint and Movie Maker was going to get a revamp, and then Paint got the revamp and Movie Maker hasn't yet? I think it was something like that.
Yeah, I've heard rumors that something was going on. I think not from internally at Microsoft. I think in the media. So I don't know if it's in the works, but I will go try to find out, and I hope there is, because I miss it a lot.
Tune in next time on Movie Maker.
Yeah.
So, Fred, I'm curious, what type of content, when you think about streaming, like what type of content is there a style of? Is there a certain type of game you're interested in streaming? Is there kind of what's your vision of your stream?
Well, I'm thinking if there's a way to do it solely on the Xbox live streaming, that would be good. Okay. Game-wise, maybe Minecraft or Gang Beasts or something like that maybe would be good.
What was the second game?
Gang Beasts.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Gang Beasts. You haven't played Gang Beasts?
I have. I haven't played it, but I know of it.
You got to remember, I'm an old guy here,
It's
so
like
Hey, you're not as old as me. You're not as old as me.
Actually, I saw something in chat too. I think someone had a question for Karen. Actually, there was a comment about it says it was from Pandy Yato. It said, "I have a curiosity question for Fred's mom, if that's okay. As a parent learning about all these features, was the information easy to figure out and easy to find, or could it be clearer for parents who may wish to learn these things?"
That's a really interesting question, because I tend to ask Fred. Fred's the one teaching me a lot of the time, but it would be really nice to have an idiot's guide for parents that are not gamers. and never will be. So yeah, I would reach out to you for that, Brannon, and ask if you could just make it in an easier format, so I don't have to go through all the YouTube stream to find out the answers to these questions. But now we know you guys. You know, we can just
Yeah.
Hey, give me a call. I am always up to chat. But no, it's funny you mentioned that, because I will say I think one of the things as an industry we need to get better at all up, not just in accessibility, but also when it comes to things like family safety and whatnot. As an industry, we do need to get better about giving parents easy to understand and very visible training and documentation and feature sets. Because look, I'm a dad, and I'm lucky in that I have some of this tech knowledge, but at the end of the day, right, I'm really busy, and so I don't have time like always to dive in as deep as I want to learn about some of the other tech that my son uses that I'm not as familiar with. Like I don't really use iPads, and I was trying to figure out how to set up family settings for iPad, and I was like, oh, this is really complicated, and somehow he keeps finding a way to disable it. So I don't know if he has a future career in hacking or not, but hopefully white hat. But what I will say is that we are aware of this. And so Caitlin Jones on my team is, again, she's fantastic at documentation. We are exploring some ways that we can make this documentation not just easier for gamers, but also for caregivers, parents, even like folks like occupational therapists, because we know there are people out there using gaming for rehabilitation, but we've had a lot of feedback. We work with spinal cord injury patients at Harborview Hospital in Seattle. And the OTs have said, hey, the adaptive controller is great. We love it. But it's really confusing for us to figure out how to like configure it. And we don't know which switches we should buy and things like that. So we are very cognizant of that. And we are working very hard to come up with ways to help make it easier for parents. So I hear you loud and clear on that one.
Yep. Even gamers such as myself with the adaptive controller, that is overwhelming, because it's like, okay, what switches do I get? Because it's not like there's not really a place where you can go and test out the stuff. So you kind of gotta figure out what you're looking at, and what may or may not work. You don't know until you get it half the time.
Right, and the prices are high for some of these things too. We're not going to spend like $200 to find out we can't use it.
Yeah, I wasn't going to drag on that very much, but yeah, the pricing is.
But we do need like a place where you can try different things. It would be something that would be kind of cool.
So.
Just on the adaptive controller, just as a quick message here, I do other things outside of Xbox when it comes to doing things with a local charity in the city where I live. Those adaptive controllers are really difficult to get hold of, if you can get hold of them at all.
Yeah, so I can give you all a little update on that. So, obviously right now supply chain for a lot of things has been really tricky. And then of course, we used to have retail stores where you could go and get them. And one of the great things about retail was you could go in and try it. So we had switches to kind of go and play around with it. Unfortunately, Microsoft doesn't have retail stores anymore. So we are talking about ways that we could create, for lack of a better word, kind of trial kits that we could maybe not send to individuals, but to like maybe clinics or to stores, like retail outlets or whatnot, where people could try out some of this stuff. But if we do that, we want to make sure that it's something that we want to be very careful about how we do it, because as some of you may know, the act of actually finding the right setup is actually a very personal experience. It's a very intimate experience, because often you're having people kind of place things around you or next to you, or in some cases even on you when you have like shoulder mounted switches. So there's a lot of thought that has to go into like what it would mean for us to do that in a way that we make sure we're giving people really useful information, and we're not making them feel awkward or uncomfortable. But I think it's something we are very aware we want to explore. And the other thing I think I would call out about the cost, because I get it, the cost is expensive. When you think about AT, I'm excited. I believe the adaptive controller in and of itself is pretty price reasonable. But when you start to think about, depending on the types of switches, there's so many of these mom and pop companies that are making these small AT devices right now. And because they're small mom and pops, they have to charge a lot of money, because they can't buy all these components in bulk or manufacture and sell in bulk. And so that's why things like the adaptive gaming kit for Logitech, I mean, you get 12. What is it? 12 buttons.
Yeah, that's a good value there. You get a lot of good switches for the price.
12 for like $99. Now, granted, that's still, I mean, I want to be clear, $99 is still, I mean, we shouldn't just toss that aside and be, oh, that's cheap, because then you're adding that to the price of the adaptive controller and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is like, we are starting to see some major companies start to invest in this space. Even Hori like came out with their own adaptive controller for the Nintendo. So like, my hope is as we see more of that happen, we'll see major manufacturers of tech input devices start to focus on making adaptive switches and technology, which will hopefully continue to drive the costs down. So that's another area that I know we talk about very regularly on our team, is like how we can partner with third parties to help manufacture some of that stuff. And yeah, so well, I feel for you.
Yeah, it's just one of the questions that actually came up in a meeting I was in a few weeks ago. Hey, will you be able to get hold of any adaptive controllers? So I actually went out on the hunt to try and look for some, even online, and they were just out of stock everywhere. I just couldn't get hold of anything. But can you show me that other thing that you just had in your hand just now?
Yeah, of course.
I've not seen that.
Yeah, this is really cool.
I haven't seen it either. Sorry. I have to.
I just sent one to Paul.
Yeah, I was going to say I have one sitting down here by my feet, actually. Yeah.
So what is it? Could you describe for the viewers at home, Brannon?
That's a great idea. So, and I'm going to actually turn off my background. My apologies for my messy man cave. But I'm going to turn off the background effects so y'all can see this clearly. Welcome to my man cave. This is what I'm holding up is a large box. The box is about 18 inches long by about 12 inches tall. It says Xbox on the top, and then it says Adaptive Gaming Kit. The logo is Logitech, so Logitech makes this. And what you see on the front is there is a picture, and there is a Velcro kind of lap board. And on top of it, there are 4 buttons. One is a large round button with an A sticker put on it, a green A sticker. One is a smaller round button with a red B sticker put on it. Another is what we call a kind of a micro light switch. It's a very light touch switch that is finger actuated that has a blue X sticker on it. And then on the far left, there's one that is basically like a trigger. Like a trigger, but it's mounted to the lap board, and it says right trigger on that. And yeah, this whole kit has 12 buttons, and it retails for $99 US. So, and these all plug in directly to the back of the Xbox adaptive controller on the 3.5 millimeter jacks.
Yeah, can I just say something else as well? Somebody in the chat earlier on, I think it was LexRax VR, mentioned a place in the UK called Special Effects, who make specifically designed adaptive controller units for people who are unable to even hold a controller. They can play it with the chin or the feet or the rear. I just wanted to say what that person mentioned in the chat. It's amazing stuff that those people do. And I have seen some of the stuff that Special Effects has done at the hospital, which I go to regular throughout the year. But I've never met anyone from Special Effects. I've just seen some of the stuff that they've left there for some of the children that needed it. But yeah, that adaptive controller was definitely something that was brought up in the last meeting. And that thing that you just showed me, as soon as the stream's over, I'm going to be looking into that.
Yeah, and that one also for me, for in the United States, I got one of those from Able Gamers. I applied to the Able Gamers, and they sent me one of those. And that was right at the same time I bought my own, so I ended up with 2 of them. So I sent Paul my extra one.
Yeah, I have a friend.
I have a friend shout out to Able Gamers and Warfighter. Yeah. I'm sorry, Able Gamers and Special Effect and Warfighter. They're another great one. But
yeah, I have a friend who's disabled. He's also a Minecraft partner, the same as me on the marketplace, and his hands are bent so far back. If I can show it on the stream, both his hands are really bent backwards, and he really struggles to use an Xbox controller at all. Yet he still manages to make content for the Minecraft marketplace. He did try to get in contact with Special Effects, but nothing came about because COVID came in and nobody could move and all the rest of the stuff. But hopefully he will get some. He'll get some help eventually. But it's amazing what he does. He can't even walk, and he's. When I went to visit him before COVID in Scotland, I was actually amazed. I didn't realize how bad his condition is. It's a brain condition that affects the movement of his fingers, and they are literally bent back, and he can't move them. But yeah, because I said to him, have you heard of special effects? And he went, no. So I gave him all the info, and then he approached them, but then COVID. So
yeah, and there was I was going to say, there are charity events. The good thing is, even though everything's been as it is with the pandemic, there has still been charity events as well, for special effects to fundraise, much like Able Gamers as well. And I actually had the great opportunity to be part of one of those recently, a fundraising event, and I ended up doing a couple of streams for that, and that went really well. I know mostly Blind Gamer, who's in the chat, was part of that, the Everyone Games event. They did the first one, and it was like tabletop RPGs and video games, sort of as a crossover event, which was really cool. So I was glad to be able to support that, even though, you know, I have an adaptive controller, but I got it for review, and I was kind of curious to test it out and see if it could help me, because, you know, I may not have a physical disability, but, you know, sometimes your thumbs hurt as well. And, you know, if you have ways of remapping things so that, you know, you don't actually injure yourself physically later on, then, you know, as well, whether that's through an adaptive controller, whether that's through an Elite, any of that, you know, that can be really useful anyway. You know, because accessibility isn't just long-term conditions; it's to help temporary conditions. You know, if you're holding a baby in one arm and you still want to be able to play the game, if you're holding a drink, or if you've, you know, got people in the next room who are sleeping and you still want to have the sound, you still want to know what's going on in the game, or, you know, you've got bandages around your eyes and you still want to be able to play. All of those things should be possible, long-term or short-term. But it's great that there are charities like Special Effects, Able Gamers, Warfighter Engaged, you know, all of those that are doing such great work.
I did see something at XO19 a few years ago, which was upstairs next to the Xbox Ambassadors booth that was there. And I think that was Special Effects as well. I mean, Tactil's in the chat.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah.
It was where they were using where you could play Minecraft with your eyes. And you didn't need to use your hands at all. It was all done with eye movement.
I wasn't there, but I can tell you for a fact that Taxel has no idea what was next to that booth, because it wasn't the flight simulator booth. Okay, I'm just
yeah, it was. Well, no, yeah, because I must admit, when I first met Taxel at XO19, the first thing he actually said to me was, "Have you been to see Microsoft Flight Simulator yet?" And I went, "No," and he was like, "It's over there on the other side." Yeah, but no, right next to the booth there was special effects with how you could play Minecraft. I just haven't seen anything of it, and it was something I mentioned to Fred. I wasn't sure whether that technology would actually be able to help Fred play a game like that better, even though his sight is impaired, but his eyes still move. I don't know whether it would still help him. He can answer that if he's still here, because Karen's got a hand up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I don't think it would really help me. I mean, it could help some other people, but yeah, I don't think it'll help me, unfortunately.
Right.
And also, I have a quick question as well. Right.
Okay.
Say if I'm doing a live stream, right, and I want to read the chat. If there's a quick way to read the chat, like a speech, like text to speech thing, that would be good to know.
Sightless
would be.
I feel like you have a prodigy, like
right there,
here, and you like the Zen master who can share your wisdom, and then Fred, you're going to be like the next SightlessKombat, and everyone.
Yeah, because this is one of the things that I wanted to do, was actually to get Fred and Sightless connected, because Sightless has always been blind as a gamer, and Fred will probably eventually go blind. And I would have thought Sightless would have been a really brilliant mentor for Fred. And that's a great question. Sightless can answer that one instantly when it comes to that. Yeah.
So just for the sake of clarity at home, for anyone who's watching either with audio only or it just wasn't looking at the screen, I had a big grin on my face and I was just nodding my head like, yep, I have an answer to this. So I'm actually using part of that solution now to keep a track of the chat as well. So there's a bot called Firebot. Shout out to Team Crowbar who develop it. And it is a bot it was originally designed for Mixer, actually, come to think of it. And I used to use it back in the Mixer days. And after Mixer shut down, they converted it over to Twitch. Now, the good thing about it is they've been really receptive to feedback from myself and other people who use it with, various disabilities and whatever else, as well as, other just people who don't have disabilities in the community as well. Just everybody, they're open to all kinds of feedback. And the good thing is, within that, if you set it up correctly, you can actually have it read the chat to you. So when I'm playing Gears, for instance, or Sea of Thieves, I will have both hands on a controller. Hold on, there we go, for demonstration purposes. So I will have both hands on a controller. I wouldn't have it up this high. But I'll be doing whatever it is I'm doing in Sea of Thieves, steering the ship on cannons or fishing or whatever. But I will be able to respond to the chat because it's being read to me via the TTS that's in Windows, without me having to actually move my hands to my keyboard to actually read the chat with a screen reader. That being said, you can still read the chat with the screen reader because it's still there and as part of the Firebot window. I'd be happy to set you up with that off stream as well if you're interested in seeing that in action firsthand. But that's how I do the ambassador streams. That's how I do my streams. And it goes way beyond that as well. You can set it to do certain things. So you can set it, if you've got timers going off, you can set it to say certain things so it's just that instead of reading the whole message. You can, the potential is massive. You can have it play sound cues and everything for various bits. You can have it even interact with things like OBS itself, so open broadcaster software. You can have it even interact with that and change your scenes and stuff as well. Not that I've ever gone that deep into it, but it does do that. So there's a lot of accessibility with Firebot, and it's arguably the most accessible bot I've actually used, which is interesting because a lot of the popular stuff has accessibility issues. So Firebot is my bot of choice that helps with that for streams on Twitch specifically.
Yeah, and
that is really good. I was just wondering if there's any way to do this solely on the Xbox. And what streaming platform do you recommend?
So that's a fun question. I've never actually live streamed from my Xbox because I've always been using OBS. The only time I ever live streamed from my Xbox was when I used Mixer. And even then, that was only when I started. And once I sort of got the kit together to work with streaming from a PC, I was streaming from that so that I could get the extra, customizability with audio and controls and being able to not have the chat reading to the stream and whatever, because that happens on other platforms too. I'm not sure what the situation is now because, of course, Twitch recently announced that they were teaming up with Xbox again to make live streaming easier from the Xbox console. So that may change things as to how easy it is to live stream from the console and read the chat. So we will have to see how that goes. But if not, if it doesn't work out, then streaming from a PC with onto Twitch and using Firebot and open broadcast software is probably your best bet for accessibility, at least from what I know.
So make sure you reach out to Twitch and tell them you want their app to be super accessible on the Xbox.
Exactly, yes. Yeah. But who do we talk to at Twitch? Because the main accessibility person left not too long ago, actually.
Well, the good news is I have somebody internally. I can't share their contact info.
No, of course.
But if you reach out to me and you have feedback, I can make sure it gets over there. Because in this industry, we all whisper between all the companies behind the scenes to make sure we're all getting our companies to do the right thing. So I would love, Fred, for you to be able to stream accessibly on our platform. And I think the chat comment you called out is going to be super important. So if Twitch has an app on our console, and so we want to make sure we ask them to please make sure that functionality is there. So a great call out there.
In fact, as of day before yesterday, it now directly tied into the console like Mixer was. So
yeah, that's what I was saying. So it does directly tie in, but the question of whether it will actually narrate the chat is still kind of unanswered.
I remember the first time I watched you stream, and you could hear the voice talking and reading the chat to you. I couldn't. There was too much audio. There was too much for me to try to input and figure out between the game, you talking, and the chat being read off, that I actually found it very difficult to follow along.
I'm not sure whether it would have been the chat reading. It might have been the menus or something.
It might have been the menu. It might have been, but there was so much input going on, audio input going on that my brain couldn't sort it all out.
Yeah.
So
I mean, sometimes even I have trouble. So, and that's why it's good to be able to reread the messages. Like you'll see chat messages coming in, proverbially speaking, and you'll want to acknowledge it, but you'll kind of half see it, and it's like, hang on a minute, what was that? Like you'll get out of the ridiculously complicated game moment you were in, and be like, oh, hang on, what was that? And then it's like, oh, you
Yeah.
said this. Thank you for the compliments on the ridiculous driving we just did in
One
Sea
thing
of
that would
Thieves.
be good is just like a little soft ding to go when someone does a chat message.
Yeah,
Also,
that too.
so-
Maybe. Yeah,
So
that
you
like
can just hear a little bit of soft rings when you, so you can access your chat right away.
yeah,
This
you can
is
do.
so.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, I
So
was just.
you can do both with Firebot actually as well, but having it as a feature on platforms directly would be good. So even
Yeah, that would
if you're
be-
just using Twitch in a browser, just having a little ping noise,
Yep.
you could maybe even customize yourself.
I think it's super important that streaming tools are accessible, and the reason is that the work that you are all doing here, all the streamers here on this call, you are helping game developers who have maybe never really interacted with people with disabilities in a meaningful way. You're helping them build empathy because you're showing them how you do what you do. I mean, you would not believe. I literally, when I tell people about just how Sightless, makes his way through all these different games and their mouths just like, how is that possible? And the fact that Sightless, you showcase through your streaming how you do this, it really helps break down this barrier, because I think for a lot of abled people, there's this mental wall. It's like there's just no way they can comprehend how someone who is blind could play a video game, and
because it's called
I
a
think
video game. That's probably why. Like people have genuinely said that. People have said to me, "Oh, one person said to me during the Killer Instinct days when that game was fully active in development, they said, "Oh, I work with blind people. They don't play video games. It's not the done thing," which was amazing.
How I met Sightless is I got a private message from Mr. Taxel from the Ambassador Program one evening, and he said, "Hey Edge, I've been playing games with this really cool guy called SightlessKombat, but due to time zones and the fact of the working hours over there, he said he was struggling to join games. And would I like to take part and play some games with Sightless?" I was the first night I played a game with Sightless, and I've never told this to her, not even to Sightless. When I came off playing that game with Sightless, I couldn't stop telling people about this guy I'd been playing a game with who was completely blind and could play the game as good as, if not better than I could. And I was just like totally amazed. And and it took me a while to try and comprehend what I'd just witnessed. And
it's so kind of you, Edge. That means a heck of a lot.
And it still gets me today. Like when I've been playing Halo with him, where we all had to blindfold ourselves and play this special match, and that it was so much fun. And then I played Gears of War 5 with Sightless, and he'd be getting headshot after headshot after headshot, and I'd be like, I can see what I'm doing, and I can't get a headshot every time. It really is. And the accessibility features built into Gears of War, for example, that help Sightless do this. This should be in every video game out there. And this is, I think, what Sightless's mission really is, and a lot of other people, is to make sure that these games are accessible to everybody. Right? Because I had so much fun with Sightless, it would be a shame not to be able to do that with another Sightless game, Sightless gamer on another game. It really is super important, and the game developers really need to take note of this.
Speaking of playing blindfolded real quick, Sightless, what was that game you were playing the other day that is a game that has no visuals or almost no visuals?
Oh, that is all right. That is the Vale Shadow of the Crown. That is an accessible audio only. Well, we'll call it that because the graphics are rather abstract. They do kind of serve a purpose, but it's more for atmosphere rather than actually playability.
The reason I bring that up is I challenge anybody in the chat or in the stream to try to play that game. If you want to have a close idea to what it's like to play as a gamer without sight, without having to wear a blindfold forever. Because I admit, if I'm wearing a blindfold, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to be cocking my head up, But if the game gives me no choice but to use audio cues, it'll really give me an idea of what Sightless goes through and other gamers without sight go through to try and figure out how to. Because I would think that you would have to almost retrain your brain to listen to where the sounds are coming from. You know.
Yeah, sighted people get really confused with the Vale because they think, oh, it's going to be this, this type of game. They see it as one thing, and then they realize that the visuals aren't going to help.
Right.
Because the visuals are sort of abstract floating bubbles, really is the best way I can describe it from what I've been told. But they kind of move with the soundscape to a point in certain places, and with characters as well. And it is available on Xbox and on PC via Steam and Itch if you're interested in checking it out. It's a $20 game for those of you in the States, and it's about £16 something. I think it was £16.74 when I looked in UK. But I would say if you want, I play it on the hardest difficulty level myself, but that's because I was a tester for the game and I wanted to give myself a challenge. But even then, sometimes even on like the easier difficulties, the fights are still definitely complicated at points. But you'll get a real sense of how the audio is key to it. Because of course you're doing audio for combat, you're doing audio for navigation, and it's a relatively small title. It's not like a full-on right. Gears 5 kind of scale or anything, but it's one of those things where it's one showcase to say to developers, look, if you're not sure whether audio is important, this game is an example of how you can use audio to make things work.
Yeah.
Whether that's go over, find a thing, and then go to this other place, or you don't have to add everything in via narration. For instance, you can use these audio cues, and as long as it's clear to the player what to do, then you're pretty much okay. But yeah, I got the opportunity with Xbox to do a full a co-hosted stream the other week, showing the Vale off, and it was funny because a couple of the developers were one of the developers, the account for the devs was in the chat. Falling Squirrel, and they said, "Oh, SK, you're making this game look easy."
Hey,
which I found pretty hilarious.
There's a question for you that just dropped in the chat. How accessible is a game like Destiny 2? And have you ever played it?
I did just see that. Right, I did play Destiny 2 at launch. Full disclaimer: I haven't really played it much since, but that's because of the lack of accessibility for gamers without sight. Partly because of cursor-based menu systems that may still exist in the game to this day.
They do.
I'm not. Yeah. I think they did when I retried it as well after some accessibility updates happened. So cursor-based menu systems without any D-pad equivalent are really, really frustrating because you have no sense of where you are on the screen as a gamer without sight. And the fact that there's no narration as well means you have even less of a sense of where you are. So unfortunately, that's just one part of the problem. Blondie, who was actually in the chat earlier, I don't know if she still is, but Blondie and I tried to play Destiny 2 together as a team to get into co-op, and you had to play through the first 2 or 3 missions of the single-player campaign when it launched to even get access to co-op. And the fact that there's no accessibility features for navigation and traversal, for auto-aim, for anything that I need personally to be able to play it without sighted assistance, or that's the way it was when I played it. There was none of that, and there likely still isn't, as far as I'm aware. I've not seen any. I feel like if Destiny 2 had those features added, it would be very big news indeed. And unfortunately, it's not very accessible at all, which is a real shame because there's potential there, and I would love to see that happen. But who knows? Maybe the next game. And that's the thing. I can't wait for the time where I have to stop saying, or where I can stop saying, oh, maybe next game this will be accessible.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things why I thought about inviting fantastic Mr. Fred, who's in the chat. I think he wants to ask a question as well. But you've always been blind, Sightless. For Fred, he's going blind, and I just wondered, how different is it going to be for him? I bet there's a lot of games he'd like to play, but he can't play. I mean, Fred can answer that himself. I mean, there must be games he'd like to play but struggles with. That he'd like to see some accessibility features added to the game.
Well,
yeah. What game? Yeah.
With I'd say, I mean, I'd like to play maybe a bit of Fortnite, but of course, when you're trying to shoot people and stuff, right? It's too hard to see the characters and all that. So I'd say I don't know how they'd make it accessible, but it would be nice to have a way to see the characters better.
I mean, even just being able to sort of snap aim roughly to where the characters are would be a start, whether you can see or not. So it would at least lock you. It would at least put you into the right part of the screen, for instance. And just to say as well, I agree. I wouldn't mind playing Fortnite as well. I've wanted to at least be able to get involved in these games. Apex, Fortnite, Warzone. Those 3 games, even off the top of my head, don't have anywhere near enough accessibility to be playable, which is such a shame when they're such cultural phenomena. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Whether you're a gamer without sight, whether you've got physical disabilities, whatever, you should be able to be involved in these cultural phenomena, or even in the most obscure indie hit of the month. You know what I mean? Like, you should be able to. There should be no reason why you can't be involved in that. And even having stuff like Halo. I want to play Halo Infinite's campaign. I want to be able to play that without any assistance whatsoever. Whether that will happen, I have no idea because I've not seen any accessibility updates on the campaign side of things yet.
I was going to say, did you get a chance to play the multiplayer flight at all?
I did, and that was simultaneously it was the most amazing thing and the most heartbreaking thing. Heartbreaking because there were things that were missing that really I would have loved to have seen. So things like a waypoint ping, much like escape ping, to let you find where the objectives are and say capture the flag or any of those kinds of modes. And also things like snap aiming so that you can actually hit people when they're sort of shooting you at range, so you don't have to slide in and melee all the time.
Well, it did, at least for me, I know it does have a slight snap aim. It does have an aim assist in it because I used it and it was the only way I hit anything. So
the point is you have to be able to see to aim at the person
get there,
first. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you can see where the person is and you can aim, then it will snap.
Yeah.
But with, say, Gears 5, you can roughly align and then, get it roughly in the right place and then it will snap for you rather than having to do a load of extra work being able to see the enemies in the first place. But the reason I said it was amazing was because Halo Infinite added not only full narration for the customization system, which I was really impressed by.
Yeah.
So I can, customize all my armor and things, all the AIs and everything. I mean, it's not fully complete, I don't think. Well, I mean, I don't know. There were a few bugs and issues I came across, but it'd be great to have things like descriptions of the armor and stuff as well. So I know, it's a, there's, it's a stripy, shoulder plate or whatever. It's got like grenade attachments on it, that kind of stuff. So then I could describe that to my friends or whatever, or maybe even sort of cosplay it in the future. That'd be fun.
Right.
And but also, so there's stuff like that that's missing. But the thing it did do really well was have interactive prompts for items on the floor. So a lot of games, you walk over an item, then there's no cue for what it is. So in say Gears, you walk over a gun, you've got no idea you've walked over a gun until you pick it up, try and load it, and you realize what the gun is. With Halo Infinite, you walked over it in the multiplayer flight, and it would say X to pick up Needler, X to pick up S7 Sniper, S to pick up grapple shot or whatever, and you would get these little cues, and so I could choose what I wanted to pick up based on the situation.
Right.
And as much as there's not enough accessibility for me to be able to use those things yet, I have massive optimistic pipe dream hope that one day I would be able to actually hit stuff reliably in a ranked setting in a public match and be able to be like, right, there's a rocket launcher over here, I can go over and get that. And this guy with the sniper rifle, he's gone, right? That would be amazing.
And if I can kind of chime in here, because I do want to, first off, I want to give a shout out to the folks at 343, especially.
Of course, they're doing a brilliant job. Yeah.
Yeah, Paige Johnson over there has been absolutely incredible. But yeah, I put this in chat, and Sightless is absolutely right. The game will not be blind accessible at launch. It's not going to be. But what's cool is More and more we're seeing games that are being treated more like services. Think of Sea of Thieves, for example.
Yeah.
And I think Sea of Thieves announced recently that half of their product updates have included new accessibility features and functionalities and improvements. And I know that 343 has expressed to me, at least, that is still their vision as well. They want to continue to make the product more accessible. And I did flat out bring up and said, hey, what about blind accessibility, full blind accessibility? And they didn't rule it out. They didn't commit to it either. But I mean, I think there's a day, so I'll share a story really quick. When I was first getting into accessibility back in 2006, I had an idea for how a game could be made blind accessible. And I went in and I pitched it to a third-party developer and literally was laughed out of the room. Okay? Literally. The cool thing now is, like, when I go talk to a team like 343 or Turn 10 or Mojang or whoever, and I say, here's ideas on how we can make this game fully blind accessible, no one laughs. No one goes, that's not possible. People are like, oh, wow, like, what would that look like? What would resource costs look like? Are there features that we could implement over time to kind of make it, start with making it more accessible for low vision and then, keep going to the point where we get to blind accessibility. Like, that's a huge sea change in the mentality of, I think, game studios. And I think that's great. And while it's kind of cold comfort from the standpoint that it still right now, when these games launch, they may not be blind accessible, we are seeing so much traction in this space that I am very optimistic that we will see totally blind accessible AAA titles on the console in the next year or two. There might not be a lot of them, but I think we will see them on the Xbox at least.
Yeah.
And
that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and also
let me speak to something really quick. Some games, the accessibility does come later. I just reloaded the Fall of the Jedi, and there were some accessibility. Fallen Order, rather. And there were some accessibility options that helped me that weren't there when the game launched. Control has done the same thing, where they have single shot kills. A lot of that stuff wasn't there when it launched, but because they've discussed stuff with disabled people like me and people like Brannon, they've added it in later and almost to no fanfare. They don't come out and say, hey, look at all the great stuff we did. It's just all of a sudden you realize that all this new stuff is in this menu and I can now play this game better than I've ever been able to play it before. So it's becoming the normal instead of the extra special. It's becoming...
Totally agreed. Yeah. I was going to say, just to respond to a question in chat, Clean said, did you get info on grenade pickups? Yes, I did. So it will tell you M9 frag grenade versus whatever the plasma grenades are called. But yeah, so it will tell you that kind of stuff. And the best part of it is, with that, it's the start. So Infinite is going to be the first Halo to launch with menu narration. So at least as far as I'm aware, so Halo 5 didn't have it, MCC didn't have it. It was patched in later when it came to PC with Halo Reach. And that's great to see that we're getting to the point now where menu narration is becoming the standard. What I want to see personally is where menu narration isn't considered the only thing that needs to be added. In terms of making a game blind accessible, to use the turn of phrase, and so that it goes beyond just that and maybe a couple of light aim assist things. We want to see sort of the in-depth stuff be covered as well. But I'm glad that you're as optimistic as I am, Brannon, in terms of thinking that give it a year, give it 2 years, give it maybe 3, and we'll see the learnings from games like The Last of Us Part 2, from all the Ubisoft stuff, the accessibility learnings those teams have done. We'll see all of those learnings from Remedy, from the EA side of things, from all of that stuff. We will see all of that come to fruition. But part of that is getting consultants on board as well, as early as possible in development and during it as well, all the way through, even to post-launch stuff like the Coalition have done as well. So it's just going to be interesting to see where that all goes as we continue.
Well, I think part of it is accessibility is becoming normalized instead of becoming
Yeah.
the also let's do this. It's coming in from the ground floor of they have a list of things going in that okay these things need to be taken care of right away. It's part of the buildup of the game. It's not a tack on process. You know,
Yeah.
and the same goes with the discussion out here in the community as well. I think when they review games, it shouldn't be, oh, by the way, it also has the accessibility feature should be discussed as much as the resolution, as much as the frames per second, all of
Yes.
that. It should just be part of the discussion.
Yeah, and the accessibility features can just be for everybody.
Yeah.
They don't have to be specific.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, subtitles, for instance, like audio description's a good one. Because, I've played a lot of games where audio description would massively help me understand the story and all of that. But to take it from film and TV, I watch things with my family, and they don't need AD. They don't need audio description, which is essentially a secondary track that describes the action that's going on that, is visual only, and there's no sort of, there's no sort of dialogue clarification of it, or even when there is. They don't need the audio description on, but they have it on not just because I need it, but because they don't want to miss details in the film. So the tiny little subtle details of, a person, points slightly towards the door before a giant attack happens. I don't know, with that kind of thing. Then they get those details because of that, and I think games. That's one of the big ones that games are missing out on as well, audio description and cutscenes. But that can help cutscenes and gameplay even that can help so many people understand what's going on for just for one example. And so accessibility features don't just help the people who need to use those features, but they will help everybody.
Absolutely.
Oh, funny you should say about the AD. I do the same thing. I have AD on for films as well. And recently, my dad he went to see what's it called again? Dune.
Not seen it yet. No spoilers.
He didn't need it. He just wanted it for the extra details about just to get to know him and stuff, and like the planets and stuff.
Very cool.
Since we're talking about descriptive things, I want to mention too, because we don't have any hard of hearing or deaf people on the panel today. Games like Valhalla, I noticed that actually have a setting where it'll tell you when you're walking through if there's a fire cracking next to you or if there's a sword fight going on in your vicinity, and will show you on your screen in which basic direction that is. And that kind of descriptive text helps people without hearing know where the battle is or not to get burned by the fire or other things like that. And more games, I think, need to do that. I think Valhalla is the first one that I've actually seen that fully activated in as an option, as well as like closed captions and all that other stuff. So that was a big one. And I also wanted to speak to. Remember, I asked you what game. I never answered my own question, by the way, which I kind of knew that was going to happen. But the game for me that I first noticed, while they really took somebody like me into mind, was L.A. Noire back in 2007. So relatively early in the life of the consoles. They actually had it set so that one, if I didn't want to drive to a location, I could tell my partner, "You drive the car," which is nice because I hate driving in games. And two, if I failed a quick time, like a car chase or a gunfight, like 3 times, it would come up with a prompt and say, "Hey, do you want to skip this part? We see you're having a problem." And I've been saying for the last 15 years, more games need to have that, because it allowed me to continue with the story, to continue with the game without having to like throw my controller through the window because I couldn't, catch the guy in a car in a car or shoot him before he shot me. So more and more games are some games are starting to do that, but I think it needs to become more widely available for story-driven games, especially. Hats off to Psychonauts 2 for everything that they did to make the game playable. So. Okay, that's kind of all I had to say there. I just wanted to make sure I got that.
No, perfectly valid.
Yeah, on the deaf and hard of hearing side, I think there's some really cool stuff going on. I think Fortnite did a great job with their sound visualizer, and it was really a great proof of concept again when it comes to the build for one, expand to many. Because not only is it great for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but if you're playing on a mobile device and you don't have your headphones with you and you can't hear what's going on, if you're playing outside on a bus or wherever, all of a sudden that becomes really useful to people. So I've seen some really cool stuff going on in this space. In fact, I just had a call today with one of our guy by the name of Robert Ridahall. He's in our advanced technologies group. He's an audio engineer guru, just genius. Something else to put in. And he is just exploring a ton of really cool things about how we can do things with spatial audio to make games more accessible for people with little or no vision. Things like narration, but being able to put voices, like text-to-speech voices, positionally around you. So imagine, rather than saying, if we take Sightless's example where he goes, well, it let me know that I walked over a gun. I might hear on the screen, needler, but that needler the sound is positioned spatially relative to where my character is. So I'm almost hearing like the voices coming from that direction, right? To help people guide that spot. So there's some interesting exploration that's being done there. There's interesting stuff being done with audio waypointing that he's looking into. And this is all research stuff, nothing that I think we're going to see in the short term, in our products. But it's just so cool to see like all these advances in technology that, really cutting edge stuff. And I think gaming is a really cool place for us to explore this stuff, right? I mean, think about the Kinect, right? Yeah, it didn't end up being a success on Xbox, but think about how many devices now have 3D cameras in them, right? My mobile phone has a 3D camera in it. We have Azure for Kinect for Azure. It was a great place to try this technology, and it's done, and it's being used all over the place now. I think gaming is a great test bed for really cool, innovative, accessible tech. Yeah. And I'm really excited to see more and more people start to kind of play around with these kind of advanced technologies around machine learning, AI, image recognition, and the like to make products in the game space more accessible.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, by the way, Brannon, I was going to say, you were saying about audio in terms of like spatial guidance and that kind of thing. That could potentially be useful for stuff like if you're not looking down at so say you have to look down to activate a thing. So like in Halo, where sometimes you have to look down to activate a button, and then you look down and you press it. With that, you then have the potential to be able to know that you need to look down to actually activate it, rather than a person having to say, look down a little, left a little, down a little, no, you missed it, up a little. which has happened to me a lot of times, and I think Shasters in the chat will know my pain.
It happens to me, and I can see it. Okay, I'm just saying.
And also as well, you mentioned about closed captions. I believe that's the correct turn of phrase, Paul, in terms of things like describing what's going on in scenes where, in terms of audio, there have been times where the closed captions have actually been good enough. Well, not good enough. They've been closer to audio description.
Right.
And I think in Marvel Avengers, it happened where I was reviewing it with sighted assistants, and we discovered that during at least a couple of the campaign sequences, there was closed captioning that if you just narrated it, it would basically serve as audio description if it was tweaked slightly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I'd really love to see, even just as a mock-up, a proof of concept, anything like that.
Yeah.
I'd love to. As part of my consultancy work, I don't just consult with studios, whether on the Xbox side or otherwise, but I do work, with community stuff. So the Transcribing Games project that I helped create or co-found, where we've done sort of audio described versions of video game footage. Amongst other things, collaborating on community mock-ups of things like QTEs. So we did a mock-up of how Uncharted 4's final boss fight could be if you added accessibility to it, for instance. But doing a community mock-up for something like, what if the closed captions were tweaked slightly and narrated? I feel like that's got real potential in terms of showing game developers, because sometimes that's what game developers need, a demonstration from a slightly different angle, even if it's not a playable prototype. They just need a thing to say, look, if you did this and did it this way and slightly tweaked it, then you have something. And galvanizing developers like that really helps.
Real quick, let me say, because I'm in a bunch of different communities, I do a lot of podcasting and stuff, and a lot of times I'll say something or I'll point something out, and people without disabilities, and even with the stuff with the Psychonauts too, I actually got into some Twitter arguments about the whole God mode thing. But when I explained to them why it was helpful and why it was useful, some of them, instead of biting back, would go, "You know what? I never thought of that," because they've never been exposed to those situations.
That could be the motto of most game developers, studios, publishers, whatever that I've talked to, because they'll say, "Wait, you're blind? You play video games? What?" And then I show people, and they're like, "Wait, I never thought of that. How you using these audio cues to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've been doing it for ages."
or even
you have the same thing.
I get a little bit from the opposite side. They assume because I can use my hands a little bit that well, just play more. You'll get better if you play more. No, my limitations are a little bit more than that. Or what I got a little bit of was, well, so and so's worse off than you, and he can play it this. I'm like, I'm not so and so. We're not all one size fits all.
Yeah.
It's
a spectrum.
Yeah. My physical disability, my cerebral palsy, is better than most, worse than some, but it still affects me. It affects what I can do on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes they just don't either. They've never thought about it or they refuse to understand it, so it's a continuing thing that we have to, I'm not saying we have to be aggressive about it, but especially with developers, just point it out. A lot of times they're willing to listen, and like you and I, we're willing to sit there and show them. Here, hand me a controller. I'll show you how this works or doesn't work. I'll show you how you can make it better. Because they're.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to have multiple people. I'm just typing a similar thing in the chat. It'd be great to have multiple people with similar perspectives, or the same perspective. So, two gamers without sight, for instance, working on the same project, because it's lived experience that makes the gamer, arguably. Because I handle games differently to say, Shasters, Super Blind Man, any of those people. And, that's because of the way I game, and that's because of the way they game. So having multiple points of view coming from a similar place, but showing different ways of getting around things, can often give different ideas. But a lot of the times there aren't multiple consultants working on the same project from the same angle or a slightly different version of the same angle.
Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've totally lost track of what I was going to say. By the way, to respond in the chat, when I say worse off or it has to do with, okay, I should say our capabilities are different. Okay. Some people with cerebral palsy can walk. Some people like me can't. Some people with cerebral palsy have very spastic speech to the point to where they can't talk. So maybe using the word worse was not correct. But growing up,
no.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No.
Was that from you? Was that from you? I didn't even see you.
Yeah. Let me correct, just so everyone understands what I was trying to say. I wasn't upset with what you said. What I'm saying is, I've heard this before.
Oh, okay.
And this is my other reaction. People say, "I'm worse off than you are," or "I'm worse off than you are," and I'm not saying. And what I'm saying is that I think the challenge is sometimes people use that as well, I'm worse off than you and I can do it. So then that negates your need or your experience.
Correct. That was the attitude I had thrown at me off. Yes.
Exactly. So I was just calling out to you that.
Okay. And I didn't necessarily see who wrote the message, by the way. I can't see the chat that clearly.
Sorry, I was just So just to be clear, and I did use some Microsoft approved language. Sorry, PR, my bad.
Well, I didn't see whatever it was either. I know Shasters didn't, but I didn't either. Well, I did. Well, I did, but I didn't.
But the point I'm just trying to make is that I feel like, this is a problem I see with disability, because as an example, like I have disabilities, but they're invisible. You wouldn't know it, right? And so we do have challenges, I think, in the community right now where there are assumptions made, right, about people and their abilities and how accessibility impacts them. And the problem is those are bad assumptions. And that leads to things like CerebralPaul just said, like where he's had that type of logic thrown at him, and it's not cool. So what I would say is, again, the need for our community to get out there in front of people to explain and be honest and talk about their disability and talk about how they game. It's not a requirement. I'm not telling anybody they have to, but I will say it certainly helps get the move the needle. The other thing I'll say too, total gear shift really quick, but there was a question in chat. Someone asked, has there been any more work done with epilepsy in gaming? And I can say that yes, there is. So I don't know if you all know, but Microsoft launched a new program called the Microsoft Game Accessibility Testing Service. It gives developers an ability to submit their games to us, and we will test them for accessibility. We have members of the disability community doing testing along with accessibility subject matter experts. We put together very detailed reports. It is not uncommon for a report to hit around 100 pages, and it has screenshots and videos and information. Well, one of the things we added recently is we now perform Harding FPA photosensitivity testing in that program. So I don't know if you all know, but Harding is a service, as a technology that analyzes videos, and then it will let people know if there's patterns or luminance changes that could cause or trigger epilepsy, and then it provides a report. So the problem is it can be very hard to get set up, and you have to buy a bunch of equipment, and it's crazy. So what we're trying to do is, we just added it. There's no additional cost. It's just part of our program now. We're checking those videos. Now, we don't do the whole game, to be very clear. Like, we're not going through every, from start to finish through the game. But what we do is we take the material that we're already recording, because we record all of our testing, and we just take it and we shove it through that tool. And it's a great way to catch some of these things. And then what we do is we use that as an opportunity to educate developers about A, how to avoid that type of problem in the future, and B, how they can themselves then go out and, contact Harding and purchase that type of equipment and software so that they can do it in-house and test kind of in real time. Because for Microsoft games, we do that. We have a lab that tests all of our Microsoft games kind of, it keeps kind of checking them to make sure we're not missing stuff. And we really strongly encourage publishers to do the same, to go out there and get access to those types of tools and do that testing on a regular basis for their own content. So it's a great way to kind of educate people and nudge them towards doing that. And then hopefully that will reduce the number of types of issues we see when it comes to photosensitive epilepsy. So I'm very excited about it. We've had great results with it. A lot of developers have been really enthusiastic about it. So yeah.
Oh, just to be clear, Brannon, the game accessibility testing service, is that not still just US only?
No. Wait, for testers or for... Yeah. Okay, so for testers, yes, it is currently, I will stress currently, US only. However, we've had so much demand for this service, like it blown us away. Like we have so much content going through this that we're actually looking to expand. And there are discussions about where we would expand and how we would expand. And so the UK has been brought up. So what I'll say is, like, while there's nothing official yet, I am cautiously optimistic that sometime in the future we may have opportunities for testers. The problem is, just so people know, the reason that we don't allow people to do remote testing is that we're testing content that is often not even announced, really highly sensitive content. And so we test in a very, very secure, confidential kind of environment, with triple badges on the door and all that sort of stuff, really lock it down. And so that's why we aren't doing remote testing right now, but we are trying very hard to find ways to open it up to people outside of our local area, Redmond, where we do our testing. So stay tuned.
That's great news. I mean, me and others around the world outside the US will be more than happy to assist once the various security things are figured out, which I'm sure they can be. I hope they can be, because sometimes it's just being able to physically be there. Sometimes you can't do that.
Yeah.
And as much as I would like to be there, helping with
Hey,
all
we'd
this
love
cool.
to have you.
Yeah,
Anytime,
well, I mean,
come over. Yeah, Fred, if you ever want to get over to Microsoft and take a tour, we'll give you the grand tour. You and your mom come out, and we'll show you around. And
it is amazing there. I've not been there for a couple of years, but sorry, Fred, I'll let you speak.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely amazing. I'd love to do that.
I was
You
going to
are
say it is great.
awesome.
It is great. I've not been there for a couple of years because of the world being as it is, but it's been absolutely brilliant seeing everybody and talking, basically just getting to talk accessibility and tech and games and stuff for like a good while, longer than most people would usually allow me.
Well, it's been a good talk, and we are coming up at our 2-hour mark here. Is there any last words anybody has to say as we close up shop here?
I'll wait for it. I'll let everybody else go first.
and you want to see how much time you have left to go on. I see how it is. No,
But I just want to say to Fred, I mean, that offer, Brendan say, if you ever want to get out to Microsoft, you get out there and send me some pictures. I'd love to see that. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Well, hey, maybe you come out and you join him when he comes out. Maybe.
I'd love to come.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Well, we all,
awesome.
maybe we do this panel again in person, all of us.
Yeah.
I would love that.
I was supposed to go out there right before this pandemic thing happened. I'm still mad about that. I had a trip all set up and everything.
Yeah, I had the same problem. I missed the Minecraft festival and the partner meeting, and I also missed a trip out to Redmond as well, which was for a different reason, but I still would have been at Microsoft, and I'll get out there at some point. I'll get there.
Yep. So thank everybody on the panel for joining us today. We've had some great stories and some good insight. And thank everybody in the chat for joining us. I hope you found it interesting and enlightening in a way. And of course, with most of us, like I can be found on Twitter, CerebralPaul 1, and the rest of these guys. And I didn't think about it. We really should have made up a tag with everybody's contact information. But if you have any questions for any of us, you can reach out to Twitter on most of us. I think we all have Twitter accounts.
Should we just should we just go around and give socials and stuff?
Yeah.
Should we do that?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start with you.
Yep. So I am SightlessKombat with a K, all one word, SightlessKombat on Twitter, Twitch, and on YouTube. And you can find my accessibility reviews and other stuff on my website, www.SightlessKombat.com as well. But feel free to drop by any of my streams, whether that's an ambassador stream or my personal ones as well. Sunday's ambassador stream will either be Gears 5 or Sea of Thieves. Not sure which yet, but one of those two. So definitely come along for that for Sightless Stories. So that's where you can find me. Feel free to privately message me or drop questions about accessibility and my perspective and stuff. And if you want to, consult or anything as well, if you're a developer looking for that, feel free to reach out and ask as well. Always happy to discuss.
Dave, go ahead and give me your contact information where they can find you. I'm sorry. Viper.
All right, yeah, it's
my bad.
Yeah, Viper7Gamer on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. Viper7Gamer, and also on Xbox Live, Viper7 is my gamer tag, and that's it.
All right, and let's see, Edge. Even though people may actually have questions for you because of what you do. So if you want to go ahead and give your information.
Oh yeah, well, if you're part of the Xbox Ambassadors program or you're in the Xbox Ambassadors Discord, you can always find me there, or you can find me at the Edge 1970 on Twitter, and you can DM me there. Or you can just message me on Xbox, which is the Edge 1970, and there's a space between the two E's, and that's the easiest way to find my gamer tag. And I will be streaming tomorrow morning on this channel, Morning Coffee with Edge. If you want to come and check out what I do as well, I'll be playing the new Marvel
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah. There you go.
Yay! So Edge is Star-Lord now, apparently.
I wish.
And Brandon, where can they find you?
I am Brannon Z, like I am in the chat on Twitter. You can reach out to me there. You can also, if you have any accessibility specific questions about Xbox, like what games are out there that I might be able to play, or I have a question about the adaptive controller, or I have an idea that I want to send your way, you can email us at xaccess, the word access, so xaccess at Microsoft.com, and that will go to me and my team and my director, and then we love to share that out. So if you have a piece of feedback about a specific game, we'll make sure your feedback gets over there. We can't always promise we'll get you a response from the studio, but we promise they will hear your message. So send us your feedback and your questions, and we'll do our absolute best to help out. But again, just super privileged to be here, and thanks so much for this.
And thank you again, Fred and Karen, for joining us today. I hope you had a good time. And I'm not going to offer to give out your information. That's totally up to you guys. If you have, because I know you do special things with different organizations. So if there's anything any information you want to give out, now would be a good time. If not, that's okay too.
Well, yeah, well, just thank you for inviting me, really. It's just been really good. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks for coming, Fred. It was awesome to have you here.
It was great.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yep. And of course, like I said, you can find me on Twitter, CerebralPaul1. You can find me on YouTube and Twitch at CerebralPaul, and on Xbox at CerebralPaul921. And again, thank you everybody who joined us today, and we will talk to you all later.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
See ya. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.